Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this webinar, Market Research to Build and Launch Your Small Business. I'm your moderator, Renee Goodnow from the New York Small Business Development Center. Today's host is the Pace Small Business Development Center. The Pace SBDC is part of the New York SPDC's network of 22 campus-based centers and outreach offices located across New York State. The New York SBDC is a U.S. Small Business Administration resource partner. Our services Our free services, are made possible by funding from the SBA, New York State, and our host campuses. Joining us to lead things off and to introduce our presenter is Pace SBDC Director Andrew Flamm. Andrew, I will turn things over to you.
Thanks so much, Renee. Good afternoon, everyone. And as Renee mentioned, my name is Andrew Flamm. I'm the Regional Director of the Pace University Small Business Development Center. We're based in Lower Manhattan, and look forward to our session today with my colleague Darrin Conroy. I wanted to sort of start off just very briefly, kind of introducing or reintroducing you all to the range of services our center and our colleagues throughout the state do offer to you. So if you're not presently working with one of our centers, we'd certainly encourage you to take advantage of those services and work with you as you look to build and grow your business here in New York State. As I said, Pace University's Small Business Development Center, or SPDC, is one of 22 centers located throughout the state, and we are all staffed by full-time business advisors who work one-on-one with both existing small business owners as well as emerging entrepreneurs, helping them build and grow their ventures and build and grow new job opportunities here in the state. Our range of services really focus on kind of a wide range of items, really looking at items such as kind of helping you access and build and grow your access to finance, looking at opportunities to market and promote your business, whether it's through social media, website development, or other marketing panels, looking at how to secure procurement opportunities through a range of government entities, looking at operational challenges you might be having in terms of thinking about how to build and grow and look at how to streamline your ventures, in particular, I guess, post. And then, with that topic in mind, really our advisors have worked over the last nearly 2 years now, keeping track of and being able to kind of help our clients access the wide range of private and public sector resources that are available to help businesses with COVID-19 recovery. So these are kind of some examples of the sorts of work that we do. Again, I should make sure I mention on multiple occasions, all of our services are offered at no cost. As Renee had mentioned, I guess we are funded through a wide range of grant sources from federal and state governments. So we're here to help you. We're here to help you build and grow your business here in New York State, and we look forward to it. I will drop a couple of items in the chat in a moment. The first is how to reach us. If you have any questions or things that you want to kind of follow up on based on the session today, I'll include that information there. I'll also include a link in terms of how you can access no-cost one-on-one business advisement from our center or from our colleagues throughout the state. So if you're located here in New York City, you're certainly welcome to connect with us. But that link that you'll go to will provide you access to the center that's closest to you. So if you're dialing in from other parts of the state, you'll certainly be able to connect with one that's closest to you and most convenient to you that will have as strong a handle on local resources. I'll also put into the chat a link to our upcoming small business webinars. Today's session is an example of kind of content that our center and our colleagues throughout the state offer in terms of helping to dive more deeply into an individual topic, help you understand opportunities and ways to be able to build and grow your business. Today, obviously, the focus will be on market research. Our center is hosting a session on Thursday looking at contracts negotiation. We have a colleague of mine at Pace University, who is focused on legal topics. So she's an attorney and has really provided some excellent sessions for us historically. But that's just an example. We have some social media sessions starting out next week. So I'll put a link in the chat where you can find information about all of them. And the final link that I'll put in there again is I had referenced access to COVID-19 relief programming. if you're interested in speaking with one of our business advisors about programs that are available and seeing how and which might be relevant for your business, you certainly can contact our center, and we're happy to work with you one-on-one, again, offering our services at no cost. So very briefly, that's kind of who we are and what we do. Today's topic, again, is looking at market research to build and launch your small business. I'm really delighted to be able to work with my colleague, Darrin Conroy, who's the director of the Networks Research Network, and to be able to kind of talk through kind of key strategies you should be thinking about in terms of being able to understand how market research can kind of help you as you're thinking about business launch and business growth strategies, using this data in a sensible fashion to be able to make sure that you're making really top businesses that you're building and growing. Darrin's been kind of a long-time colleague of ours, and he and his team really provide dynamic data that's helped dozens of our clients over the course of the years, and hundreds and maybe even more than that over the course of the network. So first off, sort of like a thank you, Darrin, for all the work that you and your team do to kind of help our advisors kind of do the work that they do, and all the impacts that you've had on our business. So I'll pop in and kind of help facilitate some of the discussion, but wanted to turn it over to Darrin to go through kind of their range of services, some of the key examples that we've worked on with them, and the kind of data they can help generate for you as small business owners. And we'll go from there. And Renee, in absentia, thank you for organizing this and all your help. So Darrin, I'll turn it over to you for a bit. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Renee. Greetings, everybody, from balmy Albany, New York, where it's sunny and warm, 5 degrees outside. I hope you are keeping warm wherever you are. As Andrew said, I am the director of the New York SPDC's Research Network. We've been around since 1992. I've been around as a librarian since 1993. I'm one of 5 librarians in the, here we go. We're one of 5 professional librarians. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Albany's Library Science program in 1993. We are a digital library. We're not open to the public. As a matter of fact, right now we're all working from home, so we're not even a library. We're more of just a virtual library. We do custom requests for the clients of the New York State Small Business Development Center and all its centers around the state of New York. We do roughly 2,000 each year, ranging from the very simple to the extraordinarily complicated, and are limited only by the imaginations of the clients with whom we work. You get with us 2 things that I use as a pitch. We save you time with the large number of years of experience we have collectively, and the fact that we are a digital library. We subscribe directly with 13 different and we also have databases that we found to be useful for the requests that we handle. Also have the ability to tap into numerous other databases freely, and I'm going to get to that at the end of this talk. And so that saves people money who don't have to go and buy it themselves. So first up, this is a bit of confusion when people hear the word research. Sometimes they presume we're doing what we call primary research. This is the image I have of people in white lab coats standing with clipboards in hand in focus groups or out on the street counting people walking in front of a store. We don't do that. It's a really big state, and there's only 5 of us, so that's not something we do. Instead, what we do is secondary research, which is the more common feature of any library, where you take information that other people have gathered and published, either in print or electronic form, and then we package it for you in direct response to whatever request you might have. A lot of people ask what kinds of things we do. A lot of new business advisors come on board and say, well, what can we ask you? And we say, well, anything in the business realm will do. What you see here bulleted are just examples of the more common requests that we get. In parentheses, I've added some of the tools that we have at our disposal that helps us answer them. Keep in mind that what's in parentheses here is not the sum total of the available content out there on these subjects. but rather what we do for you. And I'm going to touch upon a few of those as we move along. So when Andrew asked me to come and talk to all of you, I said, well, how do you want me to frame this thing? Because we can go in a lot of different directions. So he said, I just want people to know, how does a business owner benefit from the content you can deliver? Someone who's either starting something, kicking some tires, putting out a New Year's resolution saying, this is the year I'll be my own boss, or someone who's been in business for a while and is either considering expanding, considering exporting, or is dealing with some marketing problems, anything at all relating to that. So he said, why don't we focus on some things that we deal with a lot, show people how you can handle requests for purchasing power, which we refer to as what people spend on average on a given product or service within a certain geography, or basic population demographics, or how your income statement norms and your performance is comparing to the industry's norm for that NAICS code. Or very commonly, we need a list of businesses for any kinds of reasons, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. And what more importantly, I think, is what the trends are. The trends can be technological trends, they could be marketing trends, they could be sales trends, any kind of trend going on. Certainly, when COVID struck, that was a giant capital letter trend that every business had to contend with, and we got a lot of queries on that subject. So it's also a question of, once I know the trends now, how can I keep myself informed in the future? And I'm going to really get into that again at the end of this presentation. But here's what I decided to do. Andrew gave me 4 different things to think about, and I decided to find something in our archives that combine all of them in one neat place. So someone was, and my apologies to people who are not in New York City, but since this is the Pace SBDC in Lower Manhattan who invited me to talk today, I might be a little bit New York centric here. But anything I bring up here, any of the tools I bring up can be applied to anywhere in the state, anywhere in the country, really. So someone wanted to start a small Italian themed restaurant. He's considering 2 locations in Lower Manhattan, and they were looking for demographics, spending, financial norms, list of competitors, and current trends. And like I said, these will require, answering this required us to tap into very specific databases. We have a bunch that we can tap into. We're just not gonna get into all of them here. We don't have the time, and I don't wanna put you to sleep. So, okay. Here we go. So the first thing is demographics and consumer spending using a database called Demographics Now, which neatly combines the ability to get information on both of these topics in one place. So, sorry, this thing is not forwarding. There we go. Since we got 2 locations and 2 distinct zip codes, I'm going to search for information in those zip codes, but this database does allow us to do a lot of different work on different geographies. You can get information on the United States as a whole. You can get it for the state of New York or the state of New Jersey, the state of Connecticut, whatever. You can get it on specific counties. You can get it on a town. You can get it on a zip code. You can get it in New York City on certain neighborhoods. So what this one is going to focus on is a zip code. A zip code isn't really a geographic area, but if you do go on Google Maps and you type in a zip code, you'll see the boundaries. So it does act sort of as a geographic defined area. So the 3 I'm going to show you here is a table that shows population, daytime population. So that might give an indication as to who might be there during the lunchtime hour, and average annual spending or spending patterns for restaurants in this area. But what it doesn't get into is counting the number of pedestrians or vehicles. And I'm going to show you a thing that you can use. By the way, before I get too hip deep into this stuff, you're going to see a lot of URLs in this presentation. Like Renee said, this is all going to be available to you on YouTube. Don't feel the need to write down every URL you see that captures your interest, because you can just, go on YouTube, hit the pause button, it'll be right there. So,
Darrin, if I could jump in for a quick second, I would just
sure,
sort of mention also, just to reiterate what you were saying, is that with all of these URLs there, folks should know that a great many of them are, fee for service or fee for access, so that rather than you jotting this down and then securing that, being able to work with your small business advisors through the SPDC, you're able to access all of these databases at no cost to you. So I just wanted to make sure, and I'm sure you'll be adding that plug as well, but the fact that, what Darrin and his colleagues have available is dynamic, is so extensive, and also costs nothing as an SPDC.
Thank you for remembering that for me, Andrew. I tend to. First of all, I had a cup of coffee about an hour ago. If I'm talking too fast, please let me know, but that's a direct result of trying to stay warm in this weather. So this is a tool called Demographics Now. It's published by Gale, also known as Cengage. They're a very big producer of business-related library tools. This is a view of what it looks like from my end. So you can see up here highlighted is the two zip codes, 0002 and 0009 here in New York. And this report name is a series of templates that I can pick. And once I define the geography, the database will then populate that template with the content that we need. In this case, it's going to present data for both zip codes in one place. Makes things a lot easier. The daytime population comparison report is going to give me two different things that this client is looking for: general population and household population at the top there highlighted, and below that, the daytime population for the same area. Let me also say that a lot of the screen captures that I have here are not necessarily going to be the full screen of what I'm looking at. It's just the amount of the screen that I was able to capture for these slides. In this particular table, there's not a whole lot more data than this, but if I wanted to view a more in-depth population report from this database, it can really, it goes 2 or 3 pages long and gets into a lot more in-depth demographic variables like age, income, education level, labor, who's a student, who's retired, etc. So that's a thing. Ordinarily, I would do that separately. I just, for sake of expediency, I chose a report that showed 2 things in one spot. But you would get a lot more data from me than that. Demographics can mean it's the study of populations. So we can go in a lot of different ways with that.
Darrin, can I jump in for a second?
Sure can,
on
Andrew.
that screen you have there, I think the thing that I'll reinforce also is, this data is so important, and I think the things that small business owners, our clients, can work with in terms of their advisor. If you look at this particular data, as Darrin's mentioning, if it's a family focused, business, you'd be working with your business advisor to also be able to analyze the data that comes here. So if you see the 10002 is a 74% family population versus 52, for the alternate zip code, if you start thinking about kind of who your target market is, being able to digest this data and kind of work on, questions like that, to be able to assess, not just kind of getting this data, but what does it mean to you and your prospective business model, I think can be kind of a really effective relationship between, Darrin and his team, the advisor from the SPDC, and the small business owner.
Thanks, Andrew. That's a really important point. And I'm sorry I didn't dwell on that a little bit longer. But, sometimes the questions come in to us electronically through email, and we'll read it and we'll say, well, somebody wants to start up a childcare service. What they should get at the very least is some breakdown of population by age. Obviously, you're going to want to target people where there are a lot of children in that given area. So another database that's in this, another packaged report in this database is the retail expenditure report. And what this does is, again, give us an opportunity to see what people are spending when they eat dinner and or lunch out when they live in this zip code. So I think 100, the 0, can I just call it 2? I'll call it 2. 2 and 9 are a bit distinct. I'm not sure the populations of these areas, Andrew, so maybe that speaks to why. But that is the average figure on the Avenue A location there. So you can see that in this particular tool, if we scroll down to the next page, you would see projected data out to 2026, which is often requested. People want to see what the future trends might portend. This database gets a lot of its content in terms of spending. They get it from the Consumer Expenditure Survey, which is a joint annual survey done by the Census Bureau and the US Department of Labor. So that's where this information comes from. The population data is modeled on algorithms that they use based on census content. I'm going to guess that it was probably 2010 census data that they were using. I don't think the 2020 census data was yet available at this small a geographical level. Just in case you're wondering, did they make these numbers up? No, there's a methodology to it. And there's a very geeky 15-page PDF file elsewhere on this database that I have given to people who really want to know. I will share it with them and I will try and walk them through it before they don't get overwhelmed. Before I talked about how this database doesn't get into traffic counts, some people like to know how many people go by it at a given time. Pedestrian traffic counts are really the only ones that I've ever found that were published are based in New York because it's such a dense urban area and there's a lot more walking that goes on. This link here comes from the New York City Department of Transportation. As you can see there, they do something called the biannual pedestrian count. This link will take you to the last, I think, 10 years of this, and they'll walk you through the methodology and how they've put it together. It does not have every road covered in New York City. I tried because I know this because I tried to find the Pitt Street address down in the Lower East Side, and they didn't have that. It's not a very big street, so you can see why it wouldn't get counted, but that's there. It explains their methodology. The vehicular traffic, same thing. New York City DOT has their own count for the roads in New York City, and New York State has a lot of different reports for everywhere else in the state of New York. And I had this page in mind when I said, please don't start writing all this down. Your hand will cramp and I'm going to be already 3 slides down the road by the time you finish it. But the New York State DOT stuff is pretty cool. They also have a traffic data viewer that you can look up and you can punch in an address and you see it on a map. And it's pretty neat. Norms and ratios. Quick confession, I have a bachelor's degree in accounting. So I'm somewhat literate in the language that the people use when they create financial statements, but there is no way that I can interpret this document that comes from this database unless I spoke to some of the advisors in the field. So RMA stands for Risk Management Association. This is a tool that a lot of bankers ask for by name. It's sort of like asking for aspirin or Xerox. They used to be trademark names, and now it's just become the generic term for a thing. The database we have is current as of 2021, which is the most current available. And RMA updates their content once a year, every November. Most of the NAICS codes are listed here, and forgive me for just saying NAICS code like everybody who knows what NAICS is, the North American Industrial Classification System. I put that data link on there. Census does a really good job. This is updated every 5 years. You can go to that link if you want to know your NAICS code, but you don't have to work with us. We'll find it for you, or your advisor will find it for you. RMA is one of many different tools out there that give you financial norms. It's just the one that we've been using for 20 years and we like it and our advisors like it. We have another database from Dun & Bradstreet called First Research. They have their own tool called MicroBuilt. There are, again, numerous other ones, but I think the RMA stuff is the thing that people ask for. RMA is pretty upfront about how they go about compiling their information. They get it from member financial institutions who have financial statements that they anonymize, if that's a word, as best as possible, and they will compile it in accordance with the NAICS code system, and then you will see it presented in 3 different ways: by the size of assets that a business has, or the sales size that this company is, or historically you can just see it over a 5-year stretch. It looks like this. Again, this is from my perspective, and they make it really simple. I'm just looking for restaurants. So I'm actually looking for full service restaurants. These are restaurants that have wait staffs. Limited service restaurants are more like your fast food type of locations where it's just counter service. So you can see this can be pretty daunting to somebody who has no financial background. I often, when I send this out, I often give RMA's description of what this is. It's like an 8-page summation, but it's an awful lot of reading to go through. But you can see here on the left-hand side, it's got 6 columns under data sorted by assets. So depending on the size of the business, you can find the column that works best for the client. And usually we're dealing with people who are already existing business owners. And I think I have the other page. On the other far right side, you can see the same thing. It's 6 columns broken down by sales. And in the middle, you have 5 columns that show historical data. Andrew, did you talk about this while I was gone?
I didn't as of yet. I think I sort of focused on the screen you had up there, but I think the one thing that I'll add to this, Darrin, thank you for the cue, is as an example, if you're working with your business advisor and some of this data doesn't exactly make sense to you, sort of thinking about, as a restaurant, for instance, like what are the costs of your goods sold? Thinking about the material cost to you and how does that compare to the industry? So you're looking at, comparative, I guess I'll look at the far left-hand column, where you're looking at gross profit versus net sales, let's say. And thinking about, my reading of this is if it's plus or minus 60%, gross profit, the balance of it is what you're looking at in terms of the costs of materials to you. And thinking about as your business advisor goes through your own financial materials, being able to do a comparison as to how the numbers that you're currently achieving, how does that compare to an industry norm? And if it's better than that, then sounds like you're doing good operationally. If it's not, sort of thinking about what kinds of things you might be able to look at in terms of amending how you operate to be able to get more aligned with the industry. That's an example of how the data that Darrin and his colleagues will be able to provide, the kind of work that an advisor will be able to do in terms of helping you understand in terms of how you stack up against others in your industry of similar size.
Thanks, Andrew. And under income data, you'll see a row called operating expenses that lumps every expense in under one name. Some people need a little more distinction made between like expenses for rent and depreciation and so forth. There is another tool that we have called the Business Reference Guide that is sort of a tool that grabs information from a lot of other resources and compiles into one chapter, and they're all broken down by NAICS codes, and they're usually NAICS codes that have a lot of businesses in them. Certainly restaurants is a very popular type of industry. And the reason I bring that up is sometimes they have information in there that breaks down certain kinds like labor, certain kinds of expenses are listed in there. So sometimes people need that breakdown as well. So it is possible. It's not always going to happen, but it is another tool in our toolkit. So, okay, you wanted a list of competitors for this. And in this case, it was a list of competitors of restaurants, period. We don't need to necessarily get a list of other Italian restaurants. People can eat anywhere they choose. An Italian restaurant might be one of the choices they have. So Data Axle, this is a tool that used to be called Reference USA. This is a company, this is a product that's in a ton of public libraries. It's in a ton of academic libraries. It's a very popular resource. We've been using this for almost since the beginning. We used to have it when it was in CD-ROM form back in the dark days. So it's got 16 million businesses in there. That includes a lot of government agencies and other nonprofit groups, but it's still a lot of businesses. They have a staff that does nothing but call these places up repeatedly throughout the year, and they'll just speak to somebody and make sure that the information they have is accurate, and if not, they'll update it, and if it's closed, they will delete it. During COVID times, I think they were actively trying to make sure that there was maybe a closure, but not a permanent closure. So that was a very useful thing for them to know. It helped us too. We would only try and do searches on businesses that were still open. There's a lot of different variables on here, and actually the company who runs this thing If you called them and asked for, they have even more variables at their home office, which is useful because they like to get people who want to buy lists from them. That is a service that they provide. So what we have is almost like a healthy fraction of what they can make available elsewhere. They do lots of different geographies, much like the Demographics Now database that I showed you earlier. A thing that people really like from us is its ability to do radius searching. So in this case, we have 2 addresses. Those would be fixed points on a map, and you can draw circles around there, 1, 2, or 3 of varying mileages. Or if you wanted to calculate by drive time, you could do that too. Give me all the people who live within a 10-minute drive of this point versus give me all the people who live within a 10-mile range of this point. Either one is possible. This is the thing that we spend a lot of time with advisors trying to hone, because there's a tendency, and I was telling Andrew this before we all gathered here today, of someone who was down in one of our New York City offices who asked for a question that would result in at least 8 million records. We can't give you 8 million. The copyright police would jump on us and take away our library cards. We would never be able to practice again. And it is just unhealthy, large number for someone to navigate through. It's overpowering. So what we try to do is keep these things to quality over quantity necessarily. The tool we use, they limit us to a download of 500 names. And that's not a hard and fast rule, but it is a nice little guide point for us. See, 500 is still a lot. So some people want lists of competitors. Some people want to know, give me a list of people I can potentially target or approach with my product or service. So keeping it there at that is a good starter. Let me also say, to backtrack a little bit more about who we are in general as a library, you can be a client and you can use us as many times as you need, okay? You don't need to use us one time, write a huge question with every conceivable question that pops into your head. You can use us. You can work as the pace as you develop your business. You can keep coming back and using our library for whatever stage of development you're in. Same thing with this list here. You might need different lists at different times in your development. Not a big deal. So, and as we've said, we're free, so the price is right. A little bit more about this database. I talked about the radius searching. It also enables us to physically draw a map. We don't draw crayons on our monitors, but we can draw anything you want. I had to do an industrial park once in Long Island that didn't have any kind of geographic thing that encompassed all of it. So I found on a web page the boundaries of this thing, and I drew the map by hand and then used that as a geographic tool. And then I ran a search of businesses contained therein. So it can be very useful. And when I don't have too much coffee, I have a steadier hand. Email is not a thing that they do on this database. Most database providers in business list database providers don't provide emails. The reasons are many. I've provided a link to an article that summarizes a lot of them. It has to do with how your eventual recipients of the emails will respond to you. And there are hosts of situations that you would rather want to avoid if you were using email to do that. So if you are curious, I recommend it. I found it fascinating, and I've given it out to quite a few business advisors to share with their clients. When we get a list that is good to go, we download it into a spreadsheet, and like we're a digital library, so a lot of the content we are going to send to you, we're going to package in a folder, and then we save it on our Google Drive page, and you'll get a URL. Click on that URL, you will see the content that we created for you. And if you ask for a list, one of the things you'll get then is a spreadsheet that has the names of the companies that you wanted. This is not the only list making tool. It's good for general searches. If you want a lawyer, martindale.com is really where you ought to go. It's a throwback to the old Martindale Hubble print volume. You can search by lawyers by specialization within any given geography in the United States. GuideStar has an enormous quantity of information on nonprofit business, nonprofits, period. ThomasNet is a great tool. You have to register for it, but it's a free registration. It helps you find super narrowly defined items that sort of fall between the cracks of how they would be classified in the NAICS code. I once had to do a search on vegan caterers, which is not, again, a thing that gets classified in the NAICS code system. So I just went on Yelp. It's not exhaustive, but I got a pretty good listing. There's a surprising number of vegan caterers out there. And lastly, there are directories that some business associations make available for free on their websites. I'm going to talk a little bit more about associations in a little bit. So this is how it looks to me. You can see in the corner, that's 16.4 million records there that are in here. These are verified businesses. This means that they've called and gotten in touch with somebody and verified the accuracy of the content. However, no list provider can guarantee 100% accuracy, because the moment you call somebody, they could shut down a month later. And the staff of this company here, Data Axle, they won't be calling again for another year. So sometimes there are going to be some businesses that you might encounter that are no longer open. It's just the nature of trying to maintain a 16 million record database.
Darrin, can I jump in for a minute with respect to that number? I think that, two things that come to mind for me, and I think it's really, seeing that number really jumps out at you, is that, when you're working with a business advisor, kind of looking at how to hone in on kind of what you want your list to be as effectively as you can, because as Darrin pointed out, you're not going to get more than 500 names anyway. You want to make sure these are the ones who are most interesting to you. So again, whether it's by industry, by geography, by size, whatever it may be, helping us help Darrin's colleagues kind of get you the data that will be most useful for you to look at in terms of business development opportunities, I think is important. And the reality is, based on our experiences with the small businesses we work with, the larger that number is, the more onerous it's going to be able to implement that business development effort. So you want to start with a more manageable number and use that as a trial effort. Work on what material you want to share with them, what kind of message you want to get out to them, and have that be kind of a trial effort. And you can work and kind of, with your business advisor in terms of shaping what that pitch is going to be and shaping what kind of material you want to share with them. So would certainly reiterate what Darrin said about kind of coming up with a more manageable number to start with, so that it becomes an easier effort for you to implement. The second application of this data that I would say we didn't talk about is when you're putting together a business plan, whether it's to secure financing, whether it's just for your own kind of informational purposes. When you're looking at competitors, you don't want 500 names there. You want to really hone in on 3 or 4 folks that are, most relevant in terms of who you are and what you're doing, in particular if it's a brick and mortar location. So being able to, think about specifically who are the best alternatives in the marketplace compared to what you're offering or what you intend to offer, and be able to use the kind of information that Darrin and his colleagues can bring to you to help identify who those folks are, and then to work with a business advisor in terms of helping your reader, your investor, your lender, your stakeholder, whoever it may be, understand how you differentiate yourself. I think is something important to incorporate. Awesome.
So this is a pretty straightforward search here. I'm looking for restaurants in these 2 zip codes, and that's it. But you can see on the left-hand side, this is only a fraction. There's a lot more to this page than you're seeing. And there's a lot of other options that we can use. Now, an advisor doesn't really know all of this stuff. I did a webinar on this for New York SBDC staff a few years ago that did a real deep dive into this. It's very technical, but again, it's part of the collaborative process. And I've mentioned before, we can work with the advisor who can then work with you, trying to get a list that works and based on the options that are available. So I would just take the number of restaurants here, and then I would cross-reference that to these 2 zip codes here. And these are businesses that are primarily classified as a restaurant. And you can see there's just under 500. That's not a hard and fast rule. It's just a good guideline for us to work with. It just so happens it's right around that 500 mark. So this is good. Then what I will then do myself is I will start scrolling through the results here. This is not all the content that you would receive. This is just sort of like a little, this is the first page. If I clicked on each business name, I would get a full record. It's got a lot more content in there. The reason why I go through there is because the very first reference there is to a liquor store. So it's not a restaurant. So I'm not going to select that and send it to you. It would be a waste of your time. These things do happen. This database is primarily human, maintained by humans, and as we all do, we make mistakes. However, DataX will also deliberately puts in incorrect data because they've had a number of incidents where people will actually use their database, say, and create a restaurant guide for an area based on their work. They don't like that. They're very adamant about that in the annual licensing agreement that we sign, promising that if we do that, they're going to be very mad and they're going to do things to us. So that's a tool for them. If they do come across sort of an illicit restaurant guide and they see that in there, they'll know that somebody purloined that from them, and then they can do what they want. So I will avoid the people having a temptation to do that, and I just don't include it. So that is a fraction of what you can do with business lists. There's a lot more to it, but I've already spent a lot of time. Anyway, this is what you will see. If I send you a folder in Google Drive and you open it, you'll see this thing. Again, you're seeing columns A through whatever. It keeps going all the way out to like AA. So there's a lot of other things going on. For the most part, you're going to get a name. I always like to give people a name to work with. Restaurants are tough though. There's such turnover in there, and they don't always have a name that sticks around. But you know, if you are addressing something to people like that, I think it's very useful to have a person that you can actually address directly. Okay, so the last thing is industry trends, and that can mean a lot of different things for us. It means either looking at industry reports or looking up articles on various article databases. First one, I've mentioned First Research before. It is a Dun & Bradstreet product. Plunkett Research is not a tool that we buy directly, but we get it through the New York Public Library, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Vertical IQ, we've only had for 2 or 3 years. It feels like we've had it forever because we use it constantly. It is an awesome tool. All of these things have overviews of an industry. They also have, Vertical IQ has some RMA data in it. They have a lot of stuff that you can use. It links to recent news stories that you can then look up. They had a whole feature, they still have it, like how COVID has affected this particular industry, how it's still affecting it. It is a fantastic addition to our library, and it is comparatively dirt cheap. And I'm still waiting for them to say, we were just kidding. We want to charge you at least 3 times what you're paying. Industry reports too, some of the bigger, larger trade associations are organized enough where they can survey their members and they can put together content. I'm going to show you one of them later on. Sometimes you can get older data from them. It's worth a look. The newest data, obviously, they're going to try and sell to you. Older data, they either sell for a lot less or they're just giving it away. So that's a thing that you should look at. And again, I'm going to talk about associations really soon. You can look at articles on the first 5 of those are owned by private library industry information gathering organizations, and ABI Inform, Business Company ASAP, Business Source Complete, which is my favorite, Prompt and Regional Business News. They're all of a type. You can go onto each of these databases. And again, these are available at the New York Public Library for free remotely, as is the Brooklyn Public Library for free remotely. You can go on there, you can search by subject, so restaurants, you can search that way. You can then, produce results. They generally come back at you in reverse chronology, newest to oldest. It's kind of an art form as to what, we'll just get to that. We'll just talk about that now. It's actually my next slide. It's how, we're trying to teach people how to do this in the future. What we're doing is a moment frozen in time, but you're going to need to know industry trends a year from now, 2 years from now. How are you going to keep on it? Okay, and these are some ideas that we've told clients over the years what to do. The last 2 we find to be the most effective. And the trade journals one is the one that I lean on the most, because it's a rather remarkable thing that some of these trade publications allow you to search for free their back issues. And by back issues, I mean like 6 months ago, not like 5 years ago. Anything older than 3 years, you're probably dealing with something that's out of date. So we try to keep things with under 3. So trade publications, as you can see here, they're often affiliated with an association. They have a lot of special issues. The buyer's guides are really cool. Forecasts for the years ahead if they have surveys. It's really worth checking those out as potential tools for you. And obviously, the bigger the industry, the more different types of publications there will be. And we use these tools to help us understand what language the people in that industry speak, which is a godsend when you're trying to do searching on other databases. Sometimes you have to search for some pretty arcane stuff. And once you learn it, it's a key that opens a door and you can really start finding stuff. Know that when you search the archives of these databases online, they're not always going to print everything in that issue. They're going to put a lot in there, but not everything. They want to, again, if they have a state of the industry report or a buyer's guide, they're going to sell that as a separate issue, just so you know. Same thing with associations. These back in the old days of the internet, association websites used to put a lot more stuff on their pages. Now they gotten savvy a little bit and they kind of package that for sale. If you're a member of that association, though, it's either you can get those things either at a deep discount or you get them for free. So it almost pays for itself. So the next question is, how do you find these things? You can do Google searches on them easy enough. You can put industry, a type of industry, restaurant, publications, you'll get a whole bunch of things. Another thing you can do is remotely access content that the New York Public Library and the Brooklyn Public Library make available. You can see highlighted there. If you're 13 or older and you live or you work or you go to school or you pay property taxes in the state of New York, you can get a card for free. If you don't have one, this is a huge bargain, huge bargain. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a librarian. They don't pay me extra for saying that. But if you don't have one, I do recommend you get one. And when you get one, you will be able to sort of navigate your way on their websites to the area where you can see the databases, and they can relate to any subject at all. What I'm showing you here is how to see the databases that relate to business. Okay, so when you get your card, remember this, follow this path, and then you'll eventually get to, on the New York Public page, it'll look like this. It says there are 46 results. You can see one. Sorry, I didn't get the whole list. But one of those things are those article databases that I referred to a moment ago, or Plunkets, okay? Now the thing you have to consider with some of these databases, once you click on that title there, you're leaving the New York Public website and you're going to the website of that particular vendor, that publisher. They may have imposed certain usage restrictions on users coming at it from New York Public or Brooklyn Public. There might be some restrictions on there. Some of them say, well, we can only accommodate, say, 100 people at a time. So they'll just say, you'll have to reboot or come back at a later time. Some are really expensive. I think IBIS World is a super duper, super expensive industry report. And I think they had it on New York Public's page. I don't know if they still do, but they were very strict about limiting the number of people. And I think you had to go to the branch. You couldn't do it remotely. You had to physically be in the library. But they limited people like 100 a month or something like that because they're just god awful expensive. So if you wanted them, if they still have them and you want one and they're great reports, they're just way out of our price range, and you want to get one of those, be there on the first of the month and see if you can get one at a branch location. So that's what it would look like from New York Public. Same thing with Brooklyn. There's some overlap between what Brooklyn has and New York Public has. Brooklyn has, I just discovered a database while preparing this presentation. I discovered a database that I was considering buying for our library, but it's now, I see that it's available through the Brooklyn Library, and it looks like they give us the whole shot, which is fantastic. So again, same thing, if you don't have a card, I know Andrew is a proud Brooklynite. I'm sure he has a library card to his borough's library
Indeed.
system.
Indeed.
Indeed you do. So there's the link right there. I've highlighted where you can go on their webpage if you haven't gotten it. Same thing, this is how you would access their resources on their site. It's a little more circuitous than what New York Public has on its page. And then it would look like this. Again, this is just a fraction of what the home page looks like. But it goes on and on. There's ABI Inform. That's a thing that I showed you before. I've been using ABI since I was in library school nearly 30 years ago. It's just a great tool. I don't know if ProQuest still owns it, but it's a great tool. One thing about doing article searches I neglected to mention, you're going to see a ton of press releases. For some reason, like a company like PR Newswire will dump a lot of press releases into your search results. I cannot vouch for the validity of PR material because that's what it is. It's PR, it's not news. If you want to read about what some company has done, you can do it, but I wouldn't like embrace it as indicative of an industry as a whole. So what we like to do is look for profiles of small businesses in an industry that might reveal certain strategies that that business used to become what they become and worthy of being published in a newspaper. Also, if there's sort of a statistical overview or industry overview article that occurred fairly recently, like within the last year, that's something that we look for. So that's kind of the parameters we try to adapt when we're doing article searches for people who are looking for trends. So get your library card.
Darrin, I know that we are at the hour.
No.
We lost you for a little bit, so I know you're not done with your slides. Are you in good shape to keep going?
I can. I'm almost done. It'll be really quick.
No worries. I was going to let folks know they're going to get the recording. So if you do have something planned and you do need to jump off, you will get the recording and the slides. So you won't have to worry about that if you do need to jump off right now. But Darrin, take your time. As long as you're in good shape, I'm in good shape here.
Okay.
If we don't get to your question that you entered during the Q&A and you don't catch it in the recording, you can reply to that Pace email and the follow-up email to discuss that with Andrew. But pardon me, go ahead.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say one of the tools that you'll find in both library collections is this thing called the Gale Directory Library. Gale is the company that we saw earlier. They do Demographics Now, which is a database. A lot of these books that they've digitized are former books, print volume. And the Gale Directory Library contains like 7 or 8 different kinds of directories, directory type books, and they're all under one umbrella title. One of the books that they digitized was something called the Directory of Publications and Broadcast Media. This is a tool that if you want to get a little more information on trade publications in a given industry, you can do that. You would just search on an industry name, search for those based in the United States, and search for those that are active. And this is an old slide one of my associates put together when they were searching for trade publications for salons. So Day Spa, Modern Salon, they're actually really great tools. They do exactly what I would want an industry publication to do, and they're something that you can get content from for a lot of the older issues. This is one, cleaning and maintenance management. If you're in the cleaning industry, this is a great tool. It's got a lot of different subject areas. You can really get into that industry. And here's Auto Inc. It's part of the Automotive Service Association. Also a great tool, and every December they have a great state of the industry report they call How is your business? And they focus not only on general auto repair, but also on body shop owners. Also 2 very popular topics that we've done for years and years and years. Another Gale directory is called Encyclopedia of Associations. This is an older slide. It shows the most current one as of 2019. I think the actual current one is 2021. Same kind of thing where you would just go on there and you would be able to search national organizations with a national reach by subject area, and you can get a lot more description about the number of members, the scope of their activities, whether they have any annual shows that you can attend, things like that, all in one place. The National Restaurant Association is a tool that they're a very big organization. We used to actually be members of it because we bought so many things from them. It was just cheaper to get a membership to get some of their industry reports, but they package so much stuff and they do a lot of forecasting on industries This particular client who triggered all of this talk today, I'm sure we sent them this. There's also a New York State chapter of this restaurant association based here in Albany. We would send people information on them as well. You know, trade associations do a lot more than just package data. They're supposed to advocate for people in legislative locations. So joining a membership would be joining an association. If you can swing it, reaps a lot of benefits, I would. And this is my last slide, and I think it's appropriate that we end on a beer because of all the technical issues. I could sure use one right now. This is the Brewers Association. I love this organization because in the late 90s, early aughts, everybody wanted to start a microbrewery. I can't tell you the number of times I called these people up directly back when we used to do that sort of thing and pick up the phone. They were super helpful. I mean, they would just talk my ear off about anything that a client had asked. It was just an unbelievable resource. I'm sure they're still really cool about sharing their stuff. But again, another feature of this site is that they have all kinds of great information, not only on a national level that you see here, but also at a state level as well. Thank you for listening to me, and there's a lot more we can do for you, and hopefully you can become clients of one of our centers, and we can do some work for you. Thank you very much.
We do have quite a few questions that came in that I will go over in a moment. Andrew, did you have anything to share before we jump into questions?
I did. I guess first off, I wanted to thank you both, Darrin and Renee. I think the session was really right on the money. I think it's exactly what I think business owners need to know, which is kind of as a recap, so first, become a small business development center client if you're not already. Work with your business advisor to figure out what kind of data, what kind of questions you're looking to answer. And then with your business advisor and with Darrin and his team's help, you can really be able to hone in on the data that will help drive those business decisions. So whether it's looking to identify business development lists, whether it's looking to identify competitors for your business, whether it's looking for industry data with respect to kind of how you stack up against the competition and make sure that your financials are kind of aligned and kind of you're operating at peak efficiency. And kind of looking at prospective neighborhoods that you may want to consider. What's the purchasing power? What are trends in those areas? So those are some things that Darrin and I spent a great deal of time kind of talking through in terms of a lot of the examples of business owners as they're considering kind of next steps and what to do. And these are really this powerful data that can help you make informed decisions in terms of how to proceed. So again, use the link, become a client if you're not already. And if you are and you're not using it yet, contact your advisor and see how this might be helpful to you. Again, I'll pop out for a minute, but again, thank you, Darrin. Thank you, Renee. This was awesome. Appreciate it.
Darrin, lots of good questions. Did you want to mention anything before I jump into them?
I'm just taking a look at some of the things that I've written, and I apologize for not mentioning Linda or LinkedIn training, but that has really been a godsend to us in the library. We do a lot of other stuff besides just do research, and one of my staff is trying to learn how to use SharePoint for some of the information that we have gathered, and she's just, yeah, it's awesome. There's just all kinds of neat little goodies for us. We love it.
Yeah, Darrin's comment is in response to a comment by an attendee. Thank you, Olivia, for sharing that. It's about the New York State Library card and the awesome online tools you get when you plug your PIN and all that information into their website to get access to all of that. So thank you, Olivia. Lots of library card fans on here. Darrin, I will mention that we got lots of thank yous that rolled in and very great content, very useful. So I will give you those compliments before we get started. This one's in reference to the vertical IQ. This person is in the food and beverage industry and is wondering how they can utilize this database. They have never heard of it before.
I hadn't heard of it either. The person who founded it was the person who began the first research database. And there's a lot of similarities between the tools where you can use it. Oh boy, they're so active. To be honest, I don't know if one of these libraries has it yet. That wouldn't surprise me. We subscribed to it about 2 or 3 years ago, and I think they're just still a growing service, but I can't imagine it's going to be small for long. I'd have to look, Renee. I don't know if this person indicated where they might be located, or are they down in the city, or do you have that available? I don't know.
I will see, I
I'd have
believe
to
it's
look into it.
Annalie. If you, oh, Annalie is in Brooklyn.
Okay. I'm trying to think where we could find it.
And if
Well,
you
you could
want,
be,
we can have
you could
Annalie touch
be,
base with Pace.
yeah, you
Go
could
ahead.
do that and access it that way. And I'd be glad to send you something. I'm sure they have tons of content on the food and beverage industry. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna say that, people would become clients of ours just to use the library, but it's not a bad idea. I mean, hopefully Andrew and his staff, if you're down using Pace, they can offer you a whole lot more than what we can, but it's your tax dollars at work, so please let us work for you.
And this is in part the reason for the session, I think. If this is a reason for you to kind of get started with our center, this is really valuable information. And I think the ability to connect with our advisors and with Darrin and his team can get you started. There's a great deal that we can do, but I think this is certainly, if this topic is of interest to you and we can provide some value in helping you build and grow your business, start with us with this and let us work in other issue areas as they arise, whether it's access to financing, helping you build and develop marketing strategies, access resources that are available for COVID recovery, whatever it may be. We're here for you, and everything we do is on cost. So by all means, contact us, and I'll put our email again in the chat.
Absolutely. Definitely great services that do complement each other quite well. So we had another question. When doing this research, how can I find how well I can narrow down my market and subsequent markets? I believe I asked that correctly. This is someone who is on their business plan journey. They want to know how to narrow down their industry. Would it be helpful, Darrin, if we knew what industry and where they were located?
Well, I'd also ask Andrew, like, as from an advisor perspective, how do you get people to sort of like focus on an area to start with before, we have a lot of people who want a lot of content up front and they want stuff for the whole country or the whole world. And you're like, I don't know if you're ready for that yet. I don't know. How do you handle those things, Andrew? Not to pass the buck, but I just passed the buck.
No worries. I think, based on the question, I think you'd want to have, you're trying to assess who your key competitors are. You're trying to assess how you stack up against them. In particular, if you're referencing kind of the business plan journey, I think you want to kind of know, I guess an advisor would want to know a bit more about what you offer or what you're hoping to offer. And then ultimately, as part of your business plan, be able to flesh out how that product or service differs from what's available in the marketplace presently. And that's when you'd be looking at who your competitors are in terms of who they are and what they do and what they offer. So I think that's based on kind of what you described. That's how we would go about kind of identifying market research. We would ask Darrin and his colleagues to pull together, because we'd want to know who's out there, and that would help you kind of assess what you're doing versus what's out there already.
Absolutely. They said that they understand the submarket that they're looking at is food and beverage, fusion cuisine. And they said thank you. Okay, this one's from Kelly. Could the question be as specific as Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration states 21 million people live in addiction and 10% seek help? Is there a way to determine the demographic of the other 90% so they can be targeted for a recovery wellness app?
I don't know how many people would self-identify, at least with the tools that we have, as, what was it, substance abuse? Was that?
Mental health services and substance abuse.
Certainly wouldn't be the database that I showed you. That's more of a, if you're looking for names of people, a lot of the databases I have for lists are going to list businesses. If you're looking for individual people, that's a whole other class of
No
databases.
names, they said. A demographic.
Yeah. Okay. One tool I didn't show everybody is something called Statista, and if you ever just do random Google searches, you're going to get hits from something called Statista, and it's hard to say Statista more than once. what that tool does is gather a lot of content from varying sources, and it's not just strictly business related. I would go to that first. I don't know if they're going to get into demographics too much, but it presents a lot of data in tabular form, and that's their forte. And it's international in scope. I would go there first, and then what I would then do is try to find a trade group or maybe the New York State Office of, I don't know, got my wife works in this industry. I should know the kinds of state agencies that are involved in it, whether they have data too. Like the Department of Health in New York State has some good stuff too. I just don't know how current it is. That's probably where I would start. And then I would
Yeah, she mentioned
follow.
the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, that database,
Okay,
and was wondering if you could drill down into that specific database.
I'd have to have a look at it. To be honest, have never used it before. I'm not quite sure what it looks like.
The great
This
thing
is
about
a
your team and you is you're always up
yeah,
for a challenge.
I was going to say this is a very specific request, and I think we would probably be best served if the attendee is working with one of the centers already. I would encourage you to connect with your business advisor, let them know you sat in on this session and you're interested in connecting with the research network to see what kind of data you might be able to secure to reference your question. If you're not already, feel free to contact our center if you're based here in New York City, and we're happy to kind of start that process with you. So I think just based on the kind of our limited time, I think that may be our best effort in terms of getting started. But it sounds like there may be some possibilities, but we'd want to kind of take a deeper dive off with you.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Kelly says, thank you. Is the RMA data also available by region or zip code?
It's available by region of the country, Northeast, Southeast.
Are there heat map views available?
Heat map views are available on the Data Axle product, where you can do a search on businesses within a certain area, and then you can select that as an option. Lots of pretty colors. We used to be able to import spreadsheets from that into Google Fusion, but Google Fusion doesn't exist anymore. Assuredly, there are equivalents out there, but they just cost money. But that's just, you know, where you can see dots on a map. So if people want to view things in pictorial fashion or graphical fashion, that's an option.
Very cool. Thank you. This was a follow-up to the question prior. She asked about the OA SAS. Is that the department needed there?
Are we talking to a librarian right now? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. Rodney, are you a librarian?
I'd like to say that I know all things about all. It's only so much head. No, I've heard that acronym before. I can't say off the top of my head. Here, let me do something incredibly rude and look at my phone while I'm presenting. That sounds very familiar to me. Like I might actually know someone who works there, but I just can't tell you what it stands for.
That's okay. While you're checking that out, Rodney had a question prior to that. And it's also in the substance abuse mental health realm. According to what I'm hearing, getting research on demographics on population, I will need analysis of drug use and treatment outcomes for a specific area in the city. Is this one of the areas that can be accessed through the research library?
You can ask us anything, man. We're going to go and look at it. In fact, the more intriguing and narrow a question is, the more fun it is for us to do. I'm sorry, I can't just tell you immediately off the top of my head what approach I would take, but it's usually just a process of just sort of digging around for a while until we find a way in. And then once we're down that rabbit hole, it just becomes a lot more fun. And I have the benefit of working with 4 people just like me. And it's an invaluable tool as well to kick ideas off my fellow librarians. And, you know, we've done 60,000 questions in my time there. So we've seen a lot of different stuff. Most of it is archived, and I can look back in our history and see what we've done in the past and just get some ideas that way. So there's a lot of different ways we could begin our journey for that.
Thank you, Darrin. Thank you, Renee. It was a great session and a lot of really important and helpful info. So And thank you all for attending. Look forward to working with you as we go forward.